Have you ever wondered where Cain found a wife and how he had a child if his parents, Adam and Eve, are the progenitors of all humanity? This problem has a biblical solution, and the answer can help us understand many other interesting things about the first humans and what the world was like at that time. The Bible tells us that Cain killed his brother Abel out of envy, and for that reason, he was cursed by God and became a fugitive, wandering the earth. Cain moved away from the Lord's presence and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. There, Genesis 4:17 says, "And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he built a city, and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch." Notice that the biblical text does not explain where this woman came from. And this becomes a problem because we know that the world had very few people up to that point. Therefore, some possibilities arise. First, perhaps God created other human lineages outside Eden, and Cain married one of these people. Second, since there were only 4 people in the world at that time, Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel, who had died, God may have created a wife for Cain. And the third possibility is that Cain married a sister or niece. Let's start with the first possibility. Cain's wife descended from other human lineages. This option presents a very serious problem from the outset. The Bible teaches that all humanity descends from a single couple, Adam and Eve. And Adam called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living. This implies that all humans came from Eve, without exception. If other independent groups of humans were created, this verse would not make sense. Another verse in the New Testament confirms this same idea. "And hath made of one blood all nations of men for to dwell on all the face of the earth." Here, Paul affirms that all humanity came from one man, Adam, which excludes the possibility that God created other separate human lineages. Therefore, this possibility has no biblical basis. The second possibility, that God created a wife for Cain since no other women existed on earth, may seem interesting at first. However, there are also problems here. See what Genesis 1:27 says. "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them." The biblical account speaks of the creation of humanity as a single event, without mentioning multiple creations. Additionally, we cannot forget the argument already presented that all humans descend from Eve. If another woman had been created, not all humans would be descended from Eve. Now, another crucial point against this possibility is the evidence that there were other people besides Cain, Adam, and Eve in the world. In Genesis 5:3-4, the text says, "And Adam lived 130 years, and begot a son in his own likeness, after his image, and called his name Seth. And the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years, and he begot sons and daughters." Although the text does not explicitly state this, it makes sense to assume that Adam and Eve had other children before Seth, in addition to Cain and Abel, as well as after Seth's birth. However, we do not know how many children they had throughout their lives, nor their names. We can then conclude that during this period, the human population could have grown considerably. Adam and Eve lived for centuries, and according to the standards of that time, they likely had many descendants. Thus, by the time Cain killed Abel, it is reasonable to assume that they already had brothers, nephews, and even subsequent generations living in different regions. This idea makes a lot of sense because in Genesis 4:14, after being cursed by God for killing Abel, Cain reveals his fear, saying, "Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth. And it shall come to pass that every one that findeth me shall slay me." This statement once again proves that there were more people than just Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel. After all, who exactly was Cain afraid of? His parents would not kill him. The only reasonable answer is that there were other people, siblings, nephews, or even great-nephews, alive when Cain was cursed. Thus, Cain's fear was related to these close relatives, who might want to avenge Abel's death. In response to Cain's fear, God gave him a guarantee of protection. "And the Lord said unto him, Therefore whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him." Therefore, we see that Cain's fear was not unfounded. Other people could indeed have taken his life, and he needed divine protection. Thus, we arrive at the third possibility. Cain married a sister or niece because the only way to find a wife was among his own relatives. However, some people question this possibility because Centuries later, God prohibited marriage between siblings in the law given to Moses. See Leviticus 18:9 and 11. The nakedness of thy sister, the daughter of thy father or daughter of thy mother, whether born at home or abroad, thou shalt not uncover. Because of this prohibition, many wonder, how could God give a command that, for a time, could not be followed? To solve this problem, we need to understand that in the early days of humanity, the only way to fulfill God's command to be fruitful and multiply was for Adam and Eve's children to marry each other. Since all humanity descended from this first couple, there was no other option for reproduction. Additionally, at the beginning of creation, the human genetic code was almost pure and free from harmful mutations. Marriage between close relatives did not result in the same genetic problems that occur today. Only over centuries did genetic mutations accumulate, making marriages between siblings a health risk for their offspring. Thus, this does not mean that God changed his mind, but rather that he established rules according to humanity's needs at different times. By the time of the Mosaic Law, there were already many people, and no one needed to marry close relatives. Furthermore, by that time, serious genetic risks had developed from such unions. A clear example that this was not initially morally wrong is the case of Abraham and Sarah, who were half-siblings. In Genesis 20:12, Abraham says, "And yet indeed she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife." Notice that even though Abraham was married to his half-sister, he was blessed by God, and is called the father of all who believe, showing that such a union was not considered sinful at that time. Therefore, Cain found his wife among his own relatives, most likely a sister or niece, because all humanity descends from Adam and Eve. I know you love learning the Bible, so I invite you to check out my mind maps on every book of the Scriptures, a resource that will finally help you get a panoramic and visual view of the whole Bible. With it, you'll gain a completely new perspective on each book of the Holy Scriptures. The link to get it is in the description. Also, watch this video that's on your screen right now. See you next time.